Okay, I'm back. So, I'm gonna just talk about various things that I like about 16, big and small, no particular order, but things that stood out to me um, as we go. And a lot of it, I would just look at what I liked and also what could have been done better. I think, as much as I mean, I really enjoyed the game, but like an Asian parent, I also, the more I enjoy something, the more I say, oh, it could have been better, it could have done this, you know. Versus if I simply disliked something, I'll be like, yeah, okay, I have nothing to say. Total apathy. So I take it as a point of note that, you know, I have so many thoughts about different aspects of this game because I think it's done so well already, but clearly because it's done so well in certain areas, the gaps are even more apparent. So in terms of the law, or rather the active time law specifically, I see a lot of people really enjoyed that feature. So when I hadn't started playing it yet, I was just watching, reading some reactions. People were like, fans were like, "Oh, this ATL active time law thing is so useful." To me, it just sounded like a dictionary, right? A glossary or whatever. I mean, I think even 13 on 12 tactics definitely all had this kinds of stuff to just recap elements of the story. I didn't get the big deal about it, but seeing in action, there are some interesting uses. Specifically because you can access the active time law live. You don't have to wait until you reach your resident librarian or whatever. Harpocrates, right? To reread, to retread the story. So being able to check certain terms and relations on the spot is interesting because that enables the dialogue, the story to be more natural and not have to recap exposition for the player. So for example, with Jill. Yeah, I just jumped to Jill here. So with Jill, I saw some fans asking like, who is she? The game doesn't tell you who she is. What's her relationship with the boys? She's just there. And that's it, you know? And to be fair, to understand the scene as it is enough. You know, you kind of, okay, she's friendly with them, could be a childhood friend, could be a noble's daughter, blah, 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 something like that. That's good enough. But of course, if you want to know more, you can just click into the active time law and find out that, oh, she's basically your Theon Greyjoy version for the FF Theon Greyjoy, right? So she's a ward of Rosaria. She was brought over after Elwyn conquered the Northern Territories, and usually what children are raised along with the in this case the heirs to create that kind of, I mean, they're in a way they are political hostages, but they are also meant to forge a bond, and then and Jill talks about it much later, be married off to forge alliances and so on. So that's Jill, right? But the game at this point doesn't say anything about it, which makes sense because they've all lived this experience. There's no need for Clive, or let's say like right now for Annabelle to be like, and you, Jill, as a ward of blah blah blah, you should know better than to, you know, it just feels, I mean, depending on how it's delivered, it could work, but generally you can tell when exposition is hidden in or forced into the dialogue. So the active time law is so useful because it can keep the dialogue more realistic. You know, you don't have a moment where you can it's like the characters are turning to look at you. It's like, hey viewer, look at this. This is the background you don't know yet. And I love it. And of course, it also demonstrates a certain level of a trust by the writers. You know, that the audience can follow the story enough with what's already on screen, or know how to go into the active time law to dig up more information if they want. The other time when the other time when I felt the active time law's strength was when we first learned about the curse, not Clive. So this is in Eastpool, where you go and see what happens to the bearers in the church. In fact, let me just jump over there. Yeah, here we are with the bearers, you know, and then this is where we as the player are first learning about the crystal's curse. But it really confused me because Clive was like, yes, the curse, you know, it's terrible, something like that. He says something like that, and it's a very like just not offhand, but again, he doesn't explain. It's not his first time learning it, and usually Clive, as the point of view character, like, he would be the mechanism through which we, the player, would learn about these things, right? Like T does in 10, who's completely lost about anything to with Spira. So that's how we learn about the world. But in this case, Clive has lived in this world for how many years? So it really doesn't make sense for him and Jill not to know what the Crystal's curse is. Yeah, there we go. The curse has taken them, all of them. Yeah, so and I thought that was a really cool way, again, where Clive and Jill can just talk like normal people, and we as the audience, the player, will have to find that information separately through active time lore on the spot if we wanted to. So again, which is something that I think is also quite interesting in how there's a difference between what Clive knows at any one point and what we, the player, knows. And I think another example of that is something like Barnabas's mummy, right? His mother. I mean, as far as we know, Clive has no clue who she is. He's never talked about her. He doesn't learn about her through Barnabas, nothing. At most, maybe if you believe a lot of the lore is canon, in case of what, in the sense that what Harpocrates finds out, he unveils to Clive and Clive learns about it. He might only find out after the fact, like way later. Again, but again, it never comes up in the story. But because so again, it's a distinction of what we, the player, know. And to be fair to Clive, I mean, he wouldn't care. Like, he doesn't have to know who every opponent's life story, which is also which makes sense, right? Clive would not realistically care about everybody, even though he is probably the most caring person in this game. But he doesn't need to know, nor would he think to ask about it. But we as the player are rewarded with these bits of lore through active time lore, through the Harpocrates, to learn more about certain characters. So the active time lore, I think, is really interesting way of telling game. I've not heard of too many complaints. I think the only complaint would be if you were to look it up during cutscenes, it breaks the flow of the cutscene, which for me is why I actually never looked it up. I always just went back to Harpocrates to figure out what's happening. But I went back a lot. Like almost after every chunk of story, I went back to just kind of reread things that I missed. But again, yeah, it's a neat feature. The only thing about, and this relates more to the lore in general, is because it's given in kind of a matter-of-fact voice, I feel like we lose the chance to just to explore the world and find out this information ourselves. So coming to, like, for example, learning about the curse, right? Like, instead of it being something you just click into ATL and then see what it is, could we not have maybe searched, and this goes into the exploration side of the game, couldn't we have searched the church library or something to see a medical journal that talks about the Crystal's curse? I feel like a lot of recent, or at least the recent FFs, or maybe it's never been part of FF, I don't know, but I don't really get a lot of this kind of in-world lore building through exploration. It's always delivered in this matter-of-fact kind of way, which is a shame. I felt the game that made the most impression on me with this was Dragon Age Origins. You could find the entire section on lore is delivered through things you find. So whether it's, and it's all in different voices. So whether it's a holy man's prayer to learn about religion in the world, or a grocery list and by a blacksmith's apprentice or something like that to learn something about daily life. And of course, there are a lot of soldiers' letters and stuff, right, in Dragon Age Origins, where you learn about maybe the monster, the opponent, blah blah blah, things like that. And that gives a chance to tell the story in different voices. It really builds up the world indirectly, and it's so rewarding to when you find these pieces and piece everything together. It's just not there. It improved a little bit in the game in 16 after the time skip. You were finding more things, like more books in the library, things about the marbles and blah blah blah. But I just feel it could have been done more, and to help fill up or at least in addition to what was in ATL, this could have added more and just made it a bit more fun and immersive in terms of the language. And I'm sure the writing team could have come up with this. Right? They definitely know how to write characters, different styles of speaking and different mannerisms. I feel like it could have been translated, but I guess it is a lot of work though. So it just doesn't feel like something that FF does a lot very well. Which is a shame. But I would have really liked more of that in terms of the lore. So those are my thoughts on active time lore and the lore segment. Yeah.